What's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg, and this is another Chance Encounter.
Hey, what's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg. I'm a commercial real estate guy. I'm from the internet. We're seeing more properties like this being built in front of a house that's going to be torn down soon. I understand that there are power lines that are getting kind of close. What's up again? This is Dan Fredenberg, and that there is a commercial real estate building.
I'm joined today with Jonathan Nichols. How you doing today?
Hey, Dan, doing great. How about yourself?
Well, I can't really complain. And if you in the audience in the little thing there, if you've never seen one of these chance encounters, this is how it works. I interview my pals or people I've just met. You never really know until you've watched the interview, I guess. But they are all commercial real estate investors. And I go through the 5 different motivations that I found are distinct among the motivations of commercial real estate investors. And I say, hey, which one's you? Then I go through the Dan Does Deals commercial roll die in the 6 different roles in a commercial deal, and I ask my guest, what's your core competency? What are you looking to contribute to the GP team? And you can actually go to DanDoesDeals.com and download your free die, and then that way, if you print it out, you can discuss it with your family or your friends, and you can communicate effectively on the topic of commercial real estate. So how cool is that? Speaking about communicating effectively, if you're going to really make it at this business, you're going to have to introduce yourself effectively. So with that little tee up there, Jonathan, how about you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously my name is Jonathan Nichols. My wife Paula and I began investing in real estate about 4 years ago after reading a little purple book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so, we didn't really know what we were doing at the time, but just started down the path and began investing in several different residential properties, which we wound up renting out via short-term rental business model. And that worked really well. Well, as we kind of had a level of success with that, we said, okay, what's the next step? Like, where do we see ourselves in real estate in the future? And, came across multifamily. And, we knew several people in our local meetup who did multifamily, and they suggested it to us as a long-term business model that was great for scaling, great for, a low risk real estate investment that you could truly develop a business out of. And so we said, hey, this is the path for us. And off we went from there. So fast forward to last year, we did 3 commercial deals as sponsors on those deals, and, looking to do some more this year. We've also passively invested in several deals as well. So that's our short and sweet story.
Sweet. So as you can tell, this is not Jonathan's first rodeo. It might not even be his second. But if we go through the motivations piece, I like to go new, and at least they'll be confident with their motivation. Whereas the role, which I've got them listed on here as well, maybe they'll be a little bit more iffy on that one. So the first motivation I've found that some investors have is they want to preserve their purchasing power. And that always sounds great, but what I'm really getting on when I say that is, like, for example, the family offices, they get all their cash flow from their wealth, from their assets, okay? And if inflation is threatening to take a bite out of the purchasing power of that cash flow, that means they constantly have to be making more acquisitions, and they're not in the business of selling. So if you're preserving your purchasing power, then inflation really is your biggest motivation for your next acquisition. The next one is my one, which is trading time for wealth. I got a background in tech. I used to work for a CRM company. So we'd email all 5 million emails a month for the most recent firm that I was working with. And the problem with having a high paying salary or wage is that you're paying the heaviest form of tax, which is income tax. So I put on my thinking cap, which is different from this one. I have another cap, that's my thinking cap. This is not my thinking cap. But I was going, then shouldn't I pivot my tech skills into these properties so that way I'm getting the privileged tax position of gaining wealth, accumulating wealth instead. So that's what I'm up to in this whole exercise. But fast tracking retirement is the most common answer for why people want to get more commercial properties. And there are a couple things that are implied. One is usually if someone's as young as Jonathan, if they say I'm fast tracking retirement, I'll be like, yeah, I don't believe you. But in this case, it's well, no, he's already well on his way as far as something like that. But the bigger thing about retirement, though, like the word retirement, is if you're fast tracking that, that means there's an end goal in sight. Maybe you want to, sit on a beach someplace where the cost of living is really low, and then just near the entry level of being an accredited investor might even be able to make that happen. But that's in contrast to the next group. If they're so ambitious that they want to buy their entire hometown, then they're never going to quit hustling. They're going to keep going in their 90s. These are very handy people to have on your GP team because they're just going to keep on going and going and going. Maybe they're looking for generational wealth to the point where their great-grandchildren will never have to have a day job. But that's the next motivation. That brings me to the last one, which is some people pick a sector of society, or maybe it's the environment, or maybe it's animals, or maybe they just want to take pride in being a landlord and help out the tenants. But basically, if there's some other motivation outside of dollars and cents, but you still want to have that huge impact, like maybe if you want to do like the Bill Gates, Warren Buffett thing where you give away like 90% of your net worth upon death, then this is you. But out of those 5 different motivations, Jonathan, what combination of those describes you best?
Man, that's really hard to decide because, quite frankly, they've all had a role, in my real estate adventures. Ironically, I would probably say the 4th, but not from the aspect of money. I would say it's more from the aspect of having an impact. And so, I recently left my W-2 job, and probably the biggest motivation behind that is I felt like I could have a bigger impact. I could do more with the time given to me, by controlling my own time and specifically working through real estate. So definitely ties in with the second one that you mentioned too. But that was really my big motivation. Certainly all the other things are also motivations behind it. But I think that real estate truly gives you the opportunity to have an impact on so many people's lives, not just your own, not just your families, but also your investors. And even as you have the last one there, your tenants as well. I'm someone who really does care about helping people out, helping the poor when I can. And I think that being able to improve a property, being able to make a better place for people to live, is a virtuous thing. And so, yeah, all of them tie together, but probably for me, I love the challenge. I love working hard and seeing how far I can go with a project.
Yeah, I really love how you put that. I've said a few times that there's a lot of negative press as far as being a landlord goes that I don't think is warranted. I keep on saying if you could afford a maid, you'd probably hire one. And that's what you're doing when you rent a place. You're paying for the custodial services in the hallways, for example, like any of those different areas, making sure that here I'm more concerned about sidewalks being shoveled than lawns being mowed. We're in a snowdrift over here where I am, but anyway. So if you don't really know commercial real estate that well, this is going to be the part that'll probably help you the most. I'm going to go through the 6 different roles in a commercial deal to find out Jonathan's core competencies, and I'm going to start with the repositioner role. Okay, so a repositioner looks at lots of different properties, and why are they doing that? They're mainly the acquisition people, but they're doing something called underwriting, which is a fancy word of doing the math. Is the building actually making the amount of money that the current owners say it is? Okay. And then they also have to understand the business intimately so they can find upside. That's what they're really looking for. And the 2 main tools in their tool belt to find upside are Operations being the first one. If your operations are more efficient, you get fewer Benjamins going down the toilet. And there's more to operations than just unclogging toilets and collecting rents. There's also marketing pieces, which is my forte. And that means that your vacancy rate will stay low. And then there's also other automations that you can do. But the second tool in the repositioner's little tool belt is the contractor team. You can do what's called a value add. You can make the place nicer so that you can charge more in rent. That is upside, okay? But there's a problem if you are my type of repositioner and you're from the internet, then you're gonna need a local, because when the going gets tough, well, I'm gonna have to look for my passport or something like that. But it makes a lot more sense to just have boots on the ground, a local, to make sure that the contractors aren't cutting corners. Same goes with the operations. Make sure everything's going to schedule and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at those 4 different roles, a tenant would usually say, oh yeah, they're the owners. Everybody's just an owner, right? But of course, there's more to it in the business than just that. You got to go to the banks, you got to go to the financiers and say, hey, can you lend me a whole whack of money? Because these things aren't cheap, okay? And a capital raiser is another type of financier, but that's a little bit more complex. I'll get to that later. But the thing that the financier, if it's a bank or whatnot, what they're really going to be concerned about, I haven't even mentioned yet. The first question on their mind is going to be, who's the sponsor? Who's the KP? Okay? And the reason for that is because if you just decide, I want to get into commercial real estate, if you want to get a loan, okay, you have to find somebody who has a similar asset who's willing to partner up on the deal. Okay, so even Elon Musk, if he wants to buy a 1,500 unit apartment complex, he's going to need somebody in the fold with a 1,500 unit apartment complex, or else he won't be eligible for the loan. But there are a couple other restrictions. There has to be a certain amount of liquidity there, and there also has to be a balance sheet put together of at least the amount of the loan. But if you have all of that, you've got yourself a commercial real estate deal. So Jonathan, which one of those is your core competency or what you're most likely to contribute in your next deal?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in our past deals, had multiple hats, and I've actually played a role in all those. I've found deals, I've worked with contractors, I've done the operations, I've found the financing, both debt and equity, and signed on the loan. So I've had a little flavor of all of them. I would say that probably the acquisition side is my favorite. I like going on the hunt for the deal, and trying to find that value in the deal that no one else can see. So we had a 8-unit property we did here in Arlington last year as an example, which most people are like, wow, that's a small deal, for multifamily. But what's interesting is that the zoning on it allows you to do short-term rental, which I mentioned is a business that we have. And so we were actually able to offer a very fair market price for the deal and totally renovate it and have a nice, renovation budget that, changed the exterior and interior of the property and basically more than doubled the NOI. So, it's interesting because a lot of people would be like, well, I'm not going to pay that much, or I'm not going to do that small of a property, but I think it's going to wind up being a home run project. And so, yeah, I like the acquisition side of things. It's very rare that I do a deal with just, one of those hats, but if I had to pick one, that's probably my favorite.
Great. And I love how your passion has really come through in this subject as well, because I think that that's really what will make the difference between one repositioner, one KP, and the next. But as far as your ideal property goes, you mentioned that smaller property, but for you in the audience, ideal property, the buy box, that I'm really looking for the geography, I'm looking for the unit counts, and I'm looking for the class. And keep in mind that when you're talking about class, there's 2 different parts, and both of them are an ABC. So A being the best, but it might be talking about the area, and it might be talking about the property itself. So keep that in mind. So Jonathan, the property where it's much easier to say yes, it's more difficult to say no in terms of geography, unit count, and class. What you got?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to like a straight down the fairway syndication, I mean, first of all, we've done a wide variety of projects. The one I just mentioned a minute ago was really a C minus as far as the property condition, at least when we bought it. And then the syndication we most recently closed on was a solid A class. So, we've seen a little bit of all, but I would say my ideal property, first of all, is at least 100 units. Once you hit that 100 range, you get to the point where you can afford to have a full-time property manager or full-time maintenance person on site. And the amount of headaches that you have as a result of that drastically decreases. And so I'm a big fan of the 100 plus units. As far as locations, I am hesitant to buy anything that is not a B location or better, because it really puts a lid on how far you can take the property when you buy in a poor location. And everyone's heard, in real estate that it's all about the location. So I'm real hesitant to buy below a B location. However, as far as the actual property itself, I will all day long buy a C class property. They tend to have the most value add, the most opportunities, and when set in a right location, the most potential for how far that you can take them. So that's probably my ideal property, 100 units, C class with some value add on the project, in a B area.
Awesome. So that's the ideal property, and let's talk about who the best person to reach out to you would be from this perspective. For me personally, I'm always eager to find more KPs because I'm from the internet, and that's who I have to know all sorts of. But for you, and without breaking any SEC restrictions, you're not allowed to entice investors unless you got a 506c raise. But and then it's only accredited investors. But who's out there who we're all networking all the time. But who's best for you to work with, and who do you want to meet more of?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's also a very hard one. So in the same way that, I've worn many hats throughout the deals I've done, if I'm organizing a deal and trying to find people, I really like to find people with, multiple abilities that can contribute to the project in multiple ways. So for example, someone who maybe they're really skilled at the asset management, on the operations, as you would call it. But also they have, a great network in terms of banks and equity and all that, and can bring that as a piece of the puzzle. That's something that, I really value a lot. I've managed the operations of multiple properties, but there's definitely people who I have brought into my network who I feel are just rock stars at it, and they've really added a lot to the team. So those are probably people I would be interested in meeting.
All right, great. And what's the best way for them to reach out to you? We met through some meetups. I found them through LinkedIn. Is there a website that's better, or what's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we do have a website. It's www.apogeemfc, as in multifamilycapital.com. And it's got a contact form like every website. Also, I'm super active on LinkedIn. So if you're friends with Dan on LinkedIn, then I'm sure you can find me. And so if you send me a message on there, I'll definitely respond, and, happy to help in any way that I can.
All right, great. And as far as ways to help, I've got one way for you in the camera to help, which is if you look over there, there's this red button, and it's awful. It's terrible, and you should kill it. And all you have to do is you just click on it, and then it turns gray, and it's not an angry red button of anger and death and horrible things. It's the gray button of tranquility and all the good things, and it's free. And the reason why I'm asking you to do that is because I really, really, really want YouTube to start paying for these videos instead of me. So if you do that, that's all it takes. Okay, all it means is that, again, it won't cost you anything, and it means that my videos might show up on your list of suggestions. There's no guarantee on that, and you wouldn't even have to watch them because you'd already done me an enormous favor. Just like Jonathan, you've done me an enormous favor by joining me today. This has been great getting to know you better.
Absolutely, Dan. Thanks for having me.
I just want to tell you, because I've actually seen your website, Real Estate is a Scam, before, and I loved it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because I think it's really so spot on. There's good stuff, bad stuff in every industry.
Yeah, make sure you subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell. For Dan the Man.
And thank you. Turn that subscribe button from red like his beard to gray like his beard will be.
So I met Dan through some networking groups for real estate investing. He's a great guy from what I know about him. He's very ambitious, and he makes it easy to come on with his questions and has a great setup. It's easy, it's clear, concise, and I'd recommend going on his interviews for anyone that's considering it.
It was unlike anything I've ever experienced. It was super fun. The process was so easy a caveman can do it. I mean, if you guys haven't done it yet, you guys need to get on his calendar. Just take 15 minutes of your time, get exposure, find out who Dan is, what he's about. He's a true trifecta. And if you don't know who he is, get in touch with him. Google his name, find him on LinkedIn, do whatever you can. Just reach out to him.
So I really appreciate the format. Like I've told you a couple times before, I think it's really great because me personally, I'm very long-winded. I have to purposefully make things more concise, but the way I take things in is I definitely prefer things to be concise and straight to the point and concentrated. And the chance encounters really do that great for individuals. So you can get a good grasp on who they are, what do they do, why do they do it, what space do they operate in. That's why I love chance encounters.